Yeah, welcome in to the Thursday edition of Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Hope everybody is having a wonderful start to their day this morning. Joe Rexrode, how are you? What's going on?
I'm okay. A couple things. You sound like, and I do, like I'm talking to bottle, so I hope that's just my headphones and not our thing. If it is out there, I apologize to all of you. But do you hear that?
No, I don't.
Okay, so it's the headphones. Okay. Second thing is I'm here, which means that I'm counting on two teenagers to get to school on their own. How do you think that's going to go?
Not well.
We should maybe – well, with one of them, I have no issues at all. No worries. One of them, maybe a little bit more. Maybe we should call him and put him on the air in a couple minutes. What do you think?
Might have to.
Yeah. I don't think it's actually good radio, but we might have to.
Nick Keyser, good morning. How are you?
I think it would be great radio. I've been there, done that. I have two brothers. I've done that, Joe.
I was going to say, you got teenagers? My goodness,
no,
Keyser.
Just I know the experience with parents, one being out of town, one's kind of
yesterday.
Just kind of hanging out. Hey, get up, go to school.
Keyser's an interesting fella.
Yeah, you never know. The mysterious life of Nick Keyser.
That's right.
The most interesting man.
That's right. God, this is really bothersome. I want you guys to try this. Like, it's really weird.
Can you hear out of both ears?
Again, yeah, but it's like it is. I'm gonna next segment. I'm gonna switch. I just want you to listen to this and
turn the dial on your little
that.
headset and see if that helps.
I know this is again great radio.
Yeah,
Let's talk about your equipment because the consultant said any chance you get, if you can talk about your equipment, your bathroom habits,
temperature in the studio,
what you had for a snack.
Do that.
Exactly, temperature in the studio.
We covered the bathroom habits, pretty succinctly with PK yesterday.
My goodness, yeah, pretty extensively.
Yeah, it was.
At least we're not talking about hurricanes
Sloppily.
in the studio either.
Either one. We've done all of it here on the program. We got a lot to get to today. Preds head coach Andrew Brunette will join us at 7:30. Preds taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight back at Bridgestone Arena. So we'll talk to Brunette at 7:30. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports from 8 to 8:30 today here on the program. So always look forward to Charles being with us. That will happen in the 8 o'clock hour today. Joe, we have breaking news, kind of. I do want to begin the show with your quick thoughts on some college basketball last night. The Lady Vols falling to MTSU. Vanderbilt loses again to San Francisco. And the Battle of the Boulevard, Belmont ekes out a 1-point victory against Lipscomb. Your thoughts on college basketball
I'm
last
just
night?
so proud of you for bringing up college basketball. Yeah, well, Vanderbilt, it's the most. I guess it's the most complete they've been. Vanderbilt men, and obviously they don't have lead Dort, but just a bad performance, bad team, bad season. So
they're not very good.
No, it's there's very little excitement or enthusiasm or anything positive going on with that program. And I tell you what, Kelly Harper's teams also had injuries. That's a bad loss. And TSU is a very good program, okay? But, this is supposed to be a Tennessee team that's supposed to be a Final Four contender, an SEC championship contender. Their fortunes can change. They get everybody going. You get Tamari Keep playing a lot more and things like that. I mean, they've been missing their best player, Rakia Jackson. So, I give them some, but 4 and 5.
Vol Twitter's not very happy.
No, Vol Twitter's, I've noticed it, is not happy. And, it's year 5, and I think Kelly Harper's been good. They've been good under her. It's just, it's kind of one of those things. I could go on and on about that program because there's two things that you have to think about. Are you comparing it to Pat Summitt's program? If you are, you're going to be forever disappointed.
Which I think a lot of people are, by the way.
Yeah, in college basketball, it's thanks to her, in part, it's way better. There's way more resources and investment and talent, all that stuff. So it's just you're going to be disappointed. But if you're comparing the performance to what the investment in this program is still and the resources and the fan base, it's disappointing. And Tennessee, that program should be great, should be consistently still a Final Four contender, and should have great coaching.
Yeah, I agree. So that's why Vol Twitter's mad.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Belmont up by like 18, lets it get all the way down, but pulls it out against Lipscomb, and always a great game.
Don't say I don't talk about college basketball.
Hey, man. I'm very,
just did it.
Like I said, very proud.
Thank you very much. I was wondering this last night, Joe, as the Titans prepare to take on the Miami Dolphins on Monday Night Football for all of America to see, which I'm sure America is very excited about. Are the Titans getting ready to take on the best team in the AFC? Kansas City, obviously, is the reigning Super Bowl champion. Baltimore's looked pretty good all year long. There are a couple different teams that you could throw that out to. Right now, the number one seed is Miami, and we've seen their offense be at times unstoppable this year. They got a lot of playmakers on the defensive side of the ball. I still think there's, with them, winning those big games is something that they really haven't done consistently yet. But they are 9-3. They are the number one seed in the AFC right now. Do you think that the Titans are playing against the AFC's best team on Monday Night Football? How do you view the Dolphins at this stage?
Nah, the Dolphins have got to they've got to step up in the big games. I'm trying to think of another team that compares to this. There's those teams that just load up on the cupcakes and they blow them out. And I think they can look as good as anyone in the NFL when they've got it rolling. Obviously the 70 points on the Broncos, but you go back. What are the most impressive performances this year? That's the thing. You go through their schedule, man, okay, great. You crushed the Panthers. You crushed the Giants. You crushed the Broncos when the Broncos were terrible. Then they go to Buffalo. That's the first big test, 48-20 loss.
I don't think they've beaten a team that's over 500.
Yeah, see, the Chiefs game, they kind of fought back. I thought that one was at least if they didn't make some mistakes, they were right there with them. But at this point, we look at the Chiefs now, and how good are they? They're still the Chiefs, and then they go to the Eagles and lose 31-17. So I can't get there. But the thing is, you bring up that question, and I think the question tells us, the AFC is wide open.
Yeah.
And again, someone told me the AFC was wide open back in August. I'd say, wow, who knows what could happen for the Titans, but no.
The AFC's this wide open, and there are 3 teams from the AFC South competing for a playoff spot. You knew that information heading into the year, you'd feel great about the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
And yet here they are. I saw this, and I think it was like Pro Football Talk or something that put this out there, and I haven't looked at the exact scenario, and I will here in just a few minutes. But apparently there's a chance that the Titans are going to be eliminated from playoff contention this weekend. So we'll see.
Yeah, so now I saw someone say that they could be the first team eliminated.
I don't know about that.
But how would that be?
I don't know.
Look, I guess if they could be eliminated this weekend.
New England's 2-10. So
right.
I don't know. It's a good question.
The Panthers were already. So
yeah, but AFC team.
And the AFC.
Oh, yeah.
So the Panthers, the Panthers are, though, nice 1-11. Yeah, so maybe the Patriots and the Titans could both.
They could both be eliminated this weekend, yes.
That's exciting.
Yes, very well. The Patriots play tonight.
Well, that's the thing. They'd have a
beautiful Thursday night matchup tonight between the Patriots and the Mitch Trubisky-led Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, it's great for the NFL that the Patriots tonight and the Titans Monday are, and the Giants Monday.
What's
also
the Sunday night game? I would love because
Cowboys-Eagles.
Okay.
It's freaking amazing.
That's good.
Yeah,
because if the Sunday night game was bad, I was like, is this the worst primetime weekend in the history of the league? But no, it's not.
Well, this is also a weekend. Yeah, the Sunday night game is fantastic, but also this is a great weekend. I know it's easy for us to sit here and say, yeah, switch these games around. People travel to games, things like that. But it's actually, I think, one of the better weekends. First of all, even like the Colts at Bengals is a big game. The Jaguars at Browns is a big game. Rams-Ravens, Seahawks-Niners, Bills-Chiefs.
Yeah.
And then Eagles-Cowboys. So, there's a bunch of great games. There's more than enough primo matchups to give us all good primetime games, and at least we have one. My gosh. So what you were saying before the show, no Pickett.
Yeah.
The Patriots just lost 6-0 at home.
Correct.
To the Chargers. Patriots-Steelers tonight. Patriots-Steelers, is a fantastic franchise matchup.
Yeah. But it could be just an intro. I'm sure Al Michaels is very excited to call this one tonight. Very excited to watch Mitch Trubisky. And I guess I don't even know. Other than the fact that they lost 6-0, I have no idea what happened to the Patriots last week. Was Mac Jones the quarterback? Was Bailey Zappi the quarterback? Are we seeing a Bailey Zappi versus Mitch Trubisky matchup tonight? Because that's enough to get America fired up.
I mean, either way. Either any Patriots quarterback and Mitch Trubisky is just peanut butter and sardines.
I'm with you on the Dolphins. I don't think they're the best team in the league. I didn't know this until I looked at their schedule. They have not beaten a team that is over 500, which is very interesting at this point in the season. So they've still got lots to prove. Having said that, I do think when their offense is clicking, they can score against anybody. I mean, you've got Waddle, and Tyreek Hill is on pace to have 2,000 yards as a receiver, which has not happened in the history of the league before. So there is that they've got that is just pretty amazing. You know, Mike McDaniel, I think, is really innovative with some of the stuff that he does. Defensively is the question, right? Like Philadelphia, they gave up 31 points. You know, Kansas City, they actually played pretty well defensively, limiting that offense to 21 points. Buffalo, when they lost to Buffalo earlier this year, they gave up 48.
Yeah.
So they've got a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, but can they put it together in some of these big matchups?
Yeah, it just they have too much on paper. They're too talented to play the way they do against good teams. So I'm very skeptical. I'd love to see them make a run. I mean, I think they're as fun a team to watch as there is.
Agreed.
Especially when Sean is available, and he has been hurt, and that is one thing. Like when they played their best games, other than the Buffalo game where they just got rolled, but you know he was a part of that. He gives that another burner in that offense. So they're fun. I mean, I think they're gonna have a good old time at the expense of the Titans, you know. But I just don't know if I can trust them in January.
Who is your best team? Baltimore?
I think so, and I've been on Baltimore. I will.
You have.
I will say from the start. You know, they just and they're. I like what they've done with their offense. I think it's a better offense, and Lamar Jackson is a more complete quarterback in that offense. They finally have, I think, you know, multiple good receivers to go with Mark Andrews, and their defense is actually better than I thought it would be. So I think this could be the year that the Ravens get there, which would shut a lot of people up if they do.
Coming up next, there's something that I've come around on with the Titans that I don't know that I'm convinced they've come around on, and we'll get into that coming up next. Take your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025, our phone number. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Proudly sponsored by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care and the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. We are live from our 102.5 The Game studio, brought to you by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. So, Joe, there was something heading into the season that I was curious about in terms of how would I feel about it and the path forward for the Titans after the year. And I'm talking about Derrick Henry, his contract, and whether or not the Titans should bring him back. He's going to be 30 in January, and even though they didn't go full rebuild this last offseason, it was a sign of a transition coming up, right? I mean, they took Levis and all those things, and Tannehill was the starter heading into this year, but we knew it was pretty likely that this was going to be Tannehill's last year as a member of the Titans. So the Tannehill part of it was always pretty easy. Like, it was like, all right, Tannehill, he's got this year, and then it's going to be Levis' show after that, and we'll see how that goes. Henry, you know, I thought maybe there was a chance that he could continue to play well and the Titans would want to bring him back next season. It wasn't as sure to me as Tannehill was that he was going to be gone at the end of the year. But when you have a running back approaching 30 and that's taken some of the hits and some of the wear and tear that he's taken, you know, coupled with, you know, the rumblings over the offseason of maybe the Titans looking around a little bit, seeing what the value for him could be, I thought maybe it made more sense that the Titans were going to move on from him after the year. I have come around on that, and I think it makes sense if you're the Titans to think about keeping him around for another year or two. And that doesn't mean that he's got to be, you know, the bell cow of your offense like he has been. And by the way, this year they've taken a step towards that. He's had 197 carries in 12 games, which puts him on pace for 279 carries. That'll be the fewest amount of carries he's had by far since 2021 when he got hurt. And that year he was on pace for more than 400 carries. So this is by far the least he's going to be used since basically 2018 when he took over and was a force offensively for the Titans.
Eventually that
year. So this has been kind of a scaling back of how much they've used Derrick Henry this year. I think you would probably see that continue as his time here went on. My question is, like, how do the Titans view it? Because, you know, Rand Carthon has talked about, you know, they weren't really shopping anybody. You can take that for whatever you think. But how do the Titans view Derrick Henry, his role on the team, and how valuable it would be to bring him back for your young quarterback, for this offense, both from a leadership perspective but also on the field? Like, I think he's shown this year that he's still got something left in the tank as he moves forward here. I think it's a good idea to consider if you're the Titans, and I would probably bring him back if you can find a price that is right, which I think you'll probably be able to this offseason. I do wonder how the Titans view that and if they feel the same way.
It's a great question. They're not going to show their hand on that.
No.
You know, they're going to say nice things about him, and I do think that if you're the Titans, you can't count on it, right? Because I just think that it totally makes sense for Derrick Henry to see what's out there and hope that maybe there's one team there's one team that really values him and thinks he has a lot left and would be perfect. We talked earlier around the trading deadline about where he'd fit. I think there's very few teams in this league where with any team, he's good enough to be one of your two backs and all that. But I think a lot of teams would look at him and say, it just doesn't fit what we do. Is it possible that he's headed toward late career kind of just being like a goal line, short yardage back kind of, I don't know. But he's much better than that right now. I do think that I'm going to stick with the Ravens. I continue to be fascinated by the idea of Derrick Henry with everything else they do in that offense with Lamar Jackson and the Eagles too. They do. Those two offenses, and the Eagles just got DeAndre Swift. I don't know right off the top of my head the contract situations for the backs on those teams. Other than that, I mean, maybe I could be surprised by somebody. People have thrown out Buffalo before, like he could be sort of the missing piece of a team that's never really hasn't had much of a running back rush production. But I think so. What I'm saying is, I'll be surprised if like something's done, before he goes out and when the year starts and free agency hits and he goes out and looks around. But if I'm the Titans, I would absolutely be open communication on, think about coming back, and I think it would be great for the Titans to have him back because it's not gonna cost you much. I mean, I think I heard it was when TD Power Hour was on with Jared. They were talking about like a 2-year. Jared's talking about like $10 million like for a year. It'd be great for him. I mean, I'd be happy to see that. To see a running back in his situation get paid that right now. But I really don't think it'll happen. I think it's going to be more like $4 to $6 million.
Yeah, I could see that. And is that something worth pursuing if you're the Titans? How much game do you still feel like he has? Because I will say this: I know the Titans. It looked like they blocked pretty well in the running game on Sunday against Indianapolis. There have certainly been times this year where they have not blocked well in the running game. So it does leave the question, and you could throw this into last year's team too, right? If you fix the offensive line, how much better would Derrick Henry have been last year? How much better could he have looked so far this year? I mean, he ran for 1,500 yards a year ago. He's at 841 right now. I think he's second in the league in rushing right now. And he's averaging 4.3 a carry, which 4.3 a carry is what he averaged in 2021 before the injury. And look, he's never again going to be 5.1 or 5.4 carry, right? I mean, it's just an absurd number. He's not going to get back to that. But could he be like if you fix the offensive line, could he be 4.6, 4.7 a carry, somewhere back in that? Like, we'll never know because it's been what it's been the last 2 years. But if you're the Titans viewing him right now, like, do you feel like he's slowed down significantly? Do you feel like if you fix other things around him that he could still be a really, really good player for you for the next year or two? And if you feel that way, like, how valuable would that be to your young quarterback to have a running back that you still feel like can operate at a high level for the next 2 years?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at his last time out. I mean, he was awfully good. And yeah, he had some seams. And guess what? When he has a seam, he usually takes advantage of it. We've talked about this year. There's been more instances of one guy being able to tackle him, and more instances of him not quite outrunning a situation where in the past he gets more yardage. Maybe he takes it all the way, things like that. But he's still very effective. And I just think Spears-Henry, maybe even a little bit more of a shared load next year if it was the two of them. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good for Will Levis, and it's fixing the offensive line, but it's also fixing the passing game, making yourself more dangerous as a passing offense, and then you're less predictable. And, the defenses actually have to make tough choices, and you put them in conflict. I mean, this offense does none of that right now. Not none of it, but not nearly enough of it. So if you actually had a great offseason fixing other things, then, yeah, I think Derrick Henry could be 4.5 or better a carry guy.
Well, and then, of course, there's another part of this equation of him coming back next year that's probably the most important question in this, and we'll get into that coming up next. We'll take your thoughts on Derrick Henry, the Tennessee Titans. Should the Titans consider bringing Henry back for next season? 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in later this morning at 8:45 for your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click and win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode. Taking your thoughts on Derrick Henry, 615-737-1025. Tim on the text line says, Joe thinks Henry's washed. The line is cheeks. He's the NFL leading rusher with any other team.
I said that? I said he's washed?
I don't think so.
Where did I say that?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think he's washed. I mean, come on. Now, Tim, I don't think he's washed at all. He's very good. I think I've said that. I say that like every day. We don't talk about Henry every day, but just about every day. But I would think you'd agree with me that there's a difference between Derrick Henry now and Derrick Henry pre-injury 21, right?
I would think so.
I would hope anybody. I mean, he's not quite that guy. I mean, that guy was on his way to another 2,000-yard season, which probably would have cemented Canton. And you have a Jones fracture, and you get older, and all that stuff happens to you. But he's absolutely very good still, and I would want him on my football team.
Well, and to that point, we've talked about, the pros and cons if you're the Titans of weighing the decision to bring him back. And then there's, of course, his decision, which is not only what's going to be, what's out there for me money-wise on the market in a running back landscape that looks like it's getting tougher and tougher every year for these guys, but how does he view the Titans and their ability to win? I mean, they're 4-8 right now, and who knows exactly where they're going to end up. 4-13 could be a possibility. But whether it's 4-13 or 6-11 or whatever they end up being at the end of the year, it's a fair question if you're Derrick Henry or anybody else to say, all right, well, where's this thing going this offseason? And is there a chance that you could be competitive next year if you make the right decisions this offseason if you're the Titans? And how much confidence, if you're Derrick Henry, do you have in Vrabel and Carthon and the Titans to make those decisions to get you back in a spot where you can be competitive next year? Because, yes, it's about the money for the running back position and all those things. Also, like if you're Derrick Henry thinking about your career and you're thinking about Canton and you're thinking about all these different things, you want to win right now, right? Like he wants to go compete for a Super Bowl. And I know it's hilarious right now to think about the Titans competing for a Super Bowl next season. And I don't know that there's a path to immediately doing that. But as you've pointed out many times, you can turn things around in the NFL pretty quickly.
You can be a
based
playoff
on the way
team.
things are set up.
Yeah, you can have a good offseason. In particular, if you have a quarterback. If you have a quarterback who's good, you can have a good offseason from a bad season and be right there to get in the playoffs. And as some people say, just get in the tournament. You never know what will happen. But, yeah, Derrick Henry, I would think, would look around. Again, Baltimore. I think right now I got Baltimore as my best team in the AFC. Let's say Baltimore, well, whatever they do this year. They look at Derrick Henry and say, man, what he brings with everything we do, that could be really effective. And if you're Derrick Henry, you're looking at them and saying, yeah, they're right now, they can get a ring. I can get a ring. So I would think that would be appealing, and that's got to be part of the equation for him too. I mean, you ultimately – like DeAndre Hopkins came here. He got the best deal here. I mean, I would not blame anybody for looking at it that way, but I do think ring chasing will be part of this. Tim says, apparently I said he could be a goal line back. I said some teams may look at him as his career as he gets older as a goal line back.
That you being
do I
out
need to
on
talk louder today?
That you being out on Derrick Henry. He's garbage. He's cheeks.
Yeah, I mean.
He's done.
Jeez, man. No, Derrick Henry. Yeah, at some point, and who knows when that will be. I mean, I'm not putting anything past this guy.
No.
I'm not putting a Frank Gore-like longevity past Derrick Henry. I mean, why not? If anybody would do that, why wouldn't it be him?
Yeah, and he takes care of himself really well. I mean, I was worried the other day because, you don't see him get knocked out of a game very often, and he gets knocked out of the game on Sunday. I'm like, oh, boy, concussion, that's not good. And apparently didn't have one. Right. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, Derrick Henry, it's like you get a hangnail, a concussion, he just like clips it off and the concussion's gone.
See ya.
He's not human. He's a cyborg.
Look, I'm really interested to see because I do think there were there was a thought heading into this season that it was just a foregone conclusion that Tannehill and Henry are both gone after this year, and the Titans are starting anew. And that still may end up being the way things go here. I mean, Tannehill for sure is going to be gone.
Yes.
But I do think if you're the Titans, there needs to be some serious conversation probably already taking place in terms of, all right, how much value do we place on Derrick Henry, his ability, what he still has in the tank as a football player? How much value do we place on, his leadership in the locker room? You got a lot of young guys on your team. You got a young quarterback, all those things. How much value do you place on all that? And what is the dollar amount that you're willing to go to if you're Rand Carthon and the Titans to make him an offer to come back? I mean, it could be as simple as the Titans look at it and say, you know what, he's about to be 30 years old. We love him. He's a franchise icon here, but it's time to move on. I mean, that very well could be the way things go this offseason. I wouldn't do that. I would seriously try to find a way to bring him back next year.
No, I would too. I think it makes sense. And yeah, again, the locker room presence part of it is a huge deal. There's not anybody in that locker room. I mean, look, I can't sit here and pretend I can talk for everybody, but he's very well liked, very respected. His voice, he's not a guy I think who talks a ton, but when he does, people care. So that's a part of this too. The idea on this also is like Tyjae Spears. I happen to what is his, what's his ultimate role?
Yeah.
I think Tyjae Spears is a guy who could get 20 carries in a game and be good. I think he's good. I think he's really good. And I don't think he's not just a third down back. He's a guy who can be a lead back for a team in this league. I really believe that. But I think a partnership of those two, I like the contrast.
Yeah, I think he can too, but I also think you see more teams around the league have that partnership and have those two backs, and the Titans just haven't done that, right? I mean, it's been Derrick Henry, and then you've thrown in
Deion Lewis.
Yes, they did have Deion Lewis. That went well. Very good at blocking.
But that's the crazy thing is some of their
on Twitter.
What's that?
Very good at blocking.
Yeah,
on Twitter.
I should see. Yeah, I'm gonna search him up on Twitter. See if did he block me? He blocked you?
Yeah. Oh, he blocked me. Yeah.
Did he?
Which was amazing because
that's amazing.
I didn't even think I was on the radio at the time he blocked me.
I gotta.
I was just talking about hockey, and he just said, "You know what? This hockey guy, he's blocked."
That's wild. Yeah, but it is also wild to think back to 5 years ago. They had some really good games where Deion Lewis actually was like the main guy, and Derrick Henry was sort of his helper. Yeah. Crazy to think about, but yeah, most teams in the NFL go that way. I mean, how many teams have a straight up clear number one back? Maybe another 6 to 8.
Yeah, handful
something
of
like that. Yeah. So, and
even like San Francisco, like Christian McCaffrey is the leading rusher in the NFL, and he's their lead back. There's no question about it. But I mean, they hand it to.
They mix in other
They hand
guys.
it to everybody.
Well,
Debo
that's true. Debo's their RB2, a WR1.
Right.
Yeah. No, but I think it's I don't see why anybody, like if you're the Titans, what would be the downside? And again, you talk about cost. Keep saying, look, $100 million or $90-some million in cap space.
Yep.
I mean, that to me, that's got to be put to use, and this is a light use of it, to bring him back. So I think it'll be more. I could be wrong, but I don't see the downside. You've already moved away from everything is built around it.
Correct.
I mean, we've seen that, and it's
the
still,
offense has changed.
And I think it has worked. The offense hasn't worked because the passing game can't function. But I think that part of it could work great next year if you fix the other things.
James on the text line says, breaking news, Robby Stanley says Derrick Henry is garbage and done.
Yeah, that's right. You did say those words.
Thank you, James.
Those were recorded.
Appreciate that.
They'll be on the podcast later.
Jared from Spring Hill says, let me guess, both of y'all supported Vrabel storming off the podium yesterday because y'all don't like PK. That's from Jared from Spring Hill.
Do we not let PK come in here? And
is that the vibe you get when PK comes on our show every week for an hour?
I mean, I do like to rip
By the way, he's going to be with us again tomorrow.
But not at this time.
Not at this time.
Yes. We will be taking over Jared's show
We will be
tomorrow.
infiltrating
We're taking
Jared's program
show over tomorrow. With
One day
PK.
only, on Friday, tomorrow. We will be from 2 to 6 p.m.
Yes. I have to get out early. I have to cut out early to do some dad taxi work.
But a trio of me,
yes.
you, and Kuharski.
Yes, taking over Jared's show show. So check it out. Now, as far as but seriously, the question about Vrabel storming off. I said this on Jared versus Joe yesterday. Another big dub, by the way. Shout out to Mark. I just, it was the end, kind of the end of the presser, but Karski's asking him, good for you, Karski. And he was right. Karski was right that it should have been asked the first day, but he asked him about Amy Adams Strunk. And, and Vrabel, I don't know if he stormed off, but he didn't answer the last question, which I don't think was a good idea. No. Answer the question.
I agree.
Now, is it because it was PK or is it because of the question?
Maybe a combination of the two.
Maybe a combination, but you got to put aside that it's PK.
I agree.
And when you basically don't answer that question, to me,
leaves it open.
Well, yeah. To me, it makes it seem like Amy Adams Strunk made you fire Craig Ackerman.
Yep. 615.
Whether that's true or not.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, it is time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
The best and worst of the sports week. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
This is the worst.
You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself. Believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
He's one of one. He is him.
This is a Coke bottle, it's not a crystal ball.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Okay, let's go.
It is that time of the week, time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. I found the end of that, the okay, let's go there. Okay. It came up again on my Instagram feed this week. I should have sent it to you.
Yeah.
I'll find it again.
Yeah, I need to see the original thing there. I don't know why it bothers me so much.
Joe, your best thing, your worst thing in the world of sports for this week.
Well, my best thing in sports is that the College Football Playoff Committee actually got something right.
You're going to make a lot of people mad.
Well, I already have, and that's fine. And my battles with coworkers at the Athletic, Stillman, et cetera, are ongoing. I mean, you, me, and Kyle Tucker, we may need to, I don't know, start a club or something.
Hunker down.
Yeah. It's just, again, I guess the games don't matter is just garbage because no one said the games don't matter. Or, you don't know what would happen. No, I know what has happened. Florida State lost its best player, its quarterback, and they've looked like crap playing without him. That's what has already actually happened in real life. So basically, this is my best and worst in sports.
But they won the games.
Yeah, and so did Liberty. I heard Trevor Maddich on Jared the other day. He just absolutely destroyed Jared on this argument. So Trevor's on our team too. And but he was much nicer than like I have been. So Florida State is the right team to not be in the playoff. And I also will say this. I 100% support if Florida State beats Georgia. I don't care if Georgia is playing their third string 5 stars. Florida State. If I had an AP vote this year, I would vote them national champion. I hope it happens. Split national championship is perfect. Let's do it. That's my best and worst.
Let's not do that.
Just sort of a mini rant, but go ahead. You don't like that?
The idea of a split national title
yes,
has always been the dumbest thing in sports to me. It's just stupid.
Brings me back to my childhood.
I'm sure it does.
Don't do dumb that hurt the team.
Nick Keyser, your best and worst things in the world of sports.
I'll go local first. Derek Mason being named the new MTSU football coach, not our Derek Mason, but formerly of Vanderbilt. I think that is a great hire. Yesterday he talked about being blue-collared and all the blue, this and that, all of that. So, yeah, good for them. They got a new coach, and he has a clear direction, so it should be fun to hear more from him. And then I thought this was cool. The Preds, when they had their shootout, this was interesting to me. So, they scored 3 goals in a row. They've never done that to win a shootout, so that was pretty cool.
Is that right?
Yeah. So
Wow.
there you go. Yeah.
That is a heck of a stat.
They have never done that. They scored 3 goals. It was Nyquist, O'Reilly, and Forsberg. So, until it doesn't work, I would keep that shootout lineup.
Well.
So, and then the worst, what are the Jets doing at quarterback?
It's pretty bad.
I don't understand. I don't really get this, guy.
been weird.
This is awful. I mean, you go from 2 quarterbacks playing to now you're back to Zach Wilson.
Yeah, it's been really weird. Like there were reports earlier this week about how apparently Zach Wilson didn't want to play, and he didn't want to. I guess Rossini reported that like they had to get Rodgers to talk to him to like try to get him back on the field.
I guess.
And then Rodgers hops on with McAfee on Tuesday on ESPN and basically says that all that's bullcrap and that he's going to let Zach Wilson speak. And then Zach Wilson gets up there yesterday and talks about how he wants to play and that he's getting the ball. It was the other part of this that's really weird is Robert Saleh earlier this week talked about how like Zach Wilson approached him and said he wanted to play, said all the right things, but that he wasn't there yet was, I believe, the word that Saleh used. Like, I'm not there yet. And then now he's the starter like 2 days later.
Very
It's
strange.
a really weird situation in New York.
And then one last question to ask ourselves is, are the Yankees back? Because they made a huge trade last night. I have no idea if they will be or not, but Juan Soto to the Yankees, did not see that one coming.
So wait,
They got a lot of money.
That's one of your. Is that your worst?
I just wanted to bring it up.
That's your
all.
mid.
He's just adding.
That's your best, worst,
He's
and
adding
mid.
qualifications to the segment.
Why not?
All right.
My best thing in sports this weekend of college football was beautiful. Regardless of what you think about the Florida State being left out of the playoff stuff, the conference championship games, I really enjoyed Washington, Oregon on Friday night. Thought it was a really good game. Georgia, Alabama, really good game. And just to know that this was the last time the conference championship weekend will ever matter for anything ever again was a very sobering thought this weekend. So I enjoyed it. I did my best to just take it all in as it was going down, and I really enjoyed conference championship weekend in college football.
Okay, let's. All right, go ahead. Go.
No,
do
go.
your
What
work.
are you going to say?
Well, I'll just say so. Next year, the exact same weekend.
Yeah.
Iowa's trying to get in the playoff. Louisville's trying to get in the playoff.
Think about what you're saying.
Well,
right now.
but that's what the playoff is. It's
But
12
no
teams.
one cares about that.
Well, sure they do. It's a
No, they
12-team
don't.
play-
No one cares about. Thank God Iowa could have a chance to be in there next
Well,
year. Or
hey.
Louisville. Oh, yes. Bring me Louisville in the college football playoff.
I'm just
I know
saying.
they lost to Kentucky the week before, but give me more Louisville in the playoff.
Let's see. Who else do we have that could get in the playoff? That would have gotten a playoff. Yeah, Oklahoma State,
Woo!
maybe.
Give me Mike Gundy
Get
in the
that mullet
playoff.
in there.
Yes. Keep them
Hey,
coming.
I'm just saying.
Ole Miss, Georgia. Let's see that again. You're right. It sounds very exciting next year.
I can't wait, man. I cannot wait. I'm pumped. Now, I'm not pumped if Iowa's one of those teams. I'm counting on Iowa to go 5-7 next year.
My worst thing in sports, the Pittsburgh Penguins are done. Like this run that they've been on, they're donezo. They're not very good. They lost 3-1 to Tampa Bay last night. Apparently had one of those closed door meetings that we hear about all the time in sports at the end of the game. And
Yeah.
it feels to me as if the Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang era is done. They missed the playoffs last year for the first time in 16 years, and it's not very good. I mean, they blew a game. Well, they didn't blow the game. They probably should have won the game against the Predators here last week, and the Predators found a way to eke that one out. You look at Pittsburgh, they're 11-11-3. They're 7th in their division right now. They're donezo. They're not very good.
Yeah. And it's like it's not that surprising, right? It's a heck of a run. I mean,
It is.
There's really you can't have any complaints if you're a Pens fan, right? I mean, it's just
I wouldn't think so.
You're going to have it's very hard to not have some ugly end to eras like that, right? It's never totally clean. So, you know what? Just dust off your VHS tapes of your championship teams. They weren't that long ago.
Honorable mention. I am looking forward to the Army-Navy game coming up this weekend. And as Ben points out, I did see the uniforms for the Army-Navy game. They always look good, but good stuff. Enjoy the Army-Navy game.
Yes, for sure.
615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we're going to get into the Nashville Predators. We got Andrew Burnett joining us at 7:30 next hour. Looking forward to that conversation with him. Preds taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight. Preds are 25 games in right now. What are the early returns on the Barry Trotz / Andrew Burnett shift of power here with the Predators? How do we feel like things are going? How do you feel like things are going with the transition of the way that the Predators are operating, the culture shift, all of those things? We'll get into that coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. We'll have Predators head coach Andrew Burnett coming up at 7:30. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports joining the program from 8 to 8:30, talking all things NFL. Looking forward to all that. Taking your thoughts in the meantime, 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Joe, Preds in action tonight, taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning at Bridgestone Arena. Tampa played last night at home against Pittsburgh. They won 3-1. So the return of Tanner Jeannot tonight after that trade that went down last season. A lot of picks coming back for the Predators. So I'm sure another video will get fired up tonight. So your favorite.
Wait a minute.
A little Tanner Jeannot tribute video?
I thought he came back through here.
I don't think so.
No, he did not.
He did not.
No.
Okay.
His first game against Nashville was to start this season.
The Tanner Jeannot tribute video, I mean, there was some good stuff for that.
Could be a little bit of punches thrown, some goals.
Yeah,
some hits.
some bone-jarring checks. Absolutely.
They're going to list each individual pick they got back from Tampa on the tribute video, too. That could take a while.
Yeah, just have the scrawl,
ticker.
the crawl of, yeah. Thank you,
Tanner.
I don't know if you guys
we like
heard.
you, but woohoo!
So I don't know if you listened to Max's conversation with David Poyle. He asked him about this trade, and he
I heard
said,
that, yeah.
what did you expect to get out of this deal? And David Poyle wanted 2 first-round picks.
Yeah.
And so this is what the value was for the first picks that he originally wanted. So I find that insane, but now he's back.
Now he's back. We'll see what that looks like. He scored last night, so we'll see what that looks like with Jeannot coming back in there tonight. I would advise, every member of the Predators, don't fight him. Just leave him alone. Maybe Luke Shen, but don't fight him other than that.
You think there's anybody here who would like to fight him?
I don't think so.
From maybe took his lunch or something
I
when he
don't
was
think so.
here? Yeah, probably not. Yeah, I wouldn't mess with that. Yeah.
Preds are 25 games in. They have a 13-12-0 record, which is kind of amazing. They have not lost a game in overtime and or shootout yet, but 13-12-0 to begin the season. And you look at where that matches up with the standings right now, and they're right there kind of on the playoff edge. They're 1 point out of a playoff spot right now behind St. Louis, a couple points behind Arizona in the wild card race. So they're right there. They're right there on that playoff bubble, which is kind of honestly exactly where I expected them to be this season. It's been up and down. I mean, at one point they were 5-10. They rolled off 6 in a row, and it looks like they've kind of steadied things out ever since that losing streak there. There have been signs of Saros starting to play a little bit better, although I didn't think he was great against Chicago the other night. So, we'll see how that continues to progress. But you got a new regime change with Barry Trotz taking over as general manager, Andrew Burnett as head coach. There's been a lot of changes that have taken place with the lineup. Overall, if you're a Predators fan, kind of looking at the 30,000-foot view right now of this team, how are we feeling 25 games in of the Trotz-Burnett era and what we've seen to this point?
Well, I think good. And I think that's still the case back before they went on their little run to get where they are, 8-2 in their last 10. I guess it's like, I think you have to feel good. I mean, we just talked about why you feel good. Because you made moves like the Tanner Jeannot move. You finally did the things to try to reset. And for the most part, also, I think, a lot of the moves that Barry Trotz made in the offseason on the veteran front have made sense. And, there's one to come here, maybe a little earlier than anticipated. But, Ryan O'Reilly has been, first of all, he's fun to watch. And second of all, I do think, that's – people talk about culture, of course. I don't know if does Trotz use that word? I guess he does.
Yeah, so every now and then, yeah.
Everybody uses the word culture.
Right.
But, there's also the overusing of, this veteran player, that player, is a culture person. But Ryan O'Reilly actually is.
He's been outstanding.
And even just the guy who gets every single thing out of himself type thing and sets kind of a tone for how you're supposed to work. Can't have too many people like that, especially if they're good.
The Factor. That's his nickname.
The Factor.
Factor. Yeah. I kind of like it.
I like that.
It's a little bit different than the other ones. I like it.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. No, he's been great. He's got 22 points, 25 games, 12 goals, 10 assists. I actually think he probably could have had a couple more. Like he's sniffing right around the goal crease every game, a couple of good opportunities. So he's been outstanding. I think he's been everything that you've wanted him to be as advertised, and that's both on the ice and off the ice. That part of it's been really good. You know, I didn't love the Luke Shin signing at the time. I don't love it now. Like, and not necessarily like the player. Like, you know, there have been times where it hadn't been very good so far this year. I don't love the contract on Luke Shin. I think 3 years that's a lot for Luke Shin. So we'll see how that ages and progresses here. But, I mean, it was kind of when Trotz made that move, it was basically the same thing he was thinking for O'Reilly, which is get him in here and see what kind of an impact that can have on the rest of the team. You know, the way that they're playing right now, I think they found a little bit of a formula of what it takes for them to be successful. And Ryan McDonough was on with Chase and Big Joe yesterday and talked about it a little bit. I think he's right. They're playing fast, and when they're winning games and when they're playing well offensively, they're playing really fast. I do think they've gotten better with their foot speed. And when you're playing guys like say what you will about Cole Smith, but Cole Smith can skate really well. I think he's been pretty good to begin this year, actually. Tomasino moves well. You know, you got Evangelista, Parsonen, Forsberg's playing at a high rate of speed. Like, I think they have become a faster team, and I think they're playing fast. And I think some of that is just the personnel that they have. I think some of that's also the system, and they're not as reliant on Yossi or in the past Ekholm. Now it would be McDonough or Barry or whoever bringing the puck up. They're trying to get it through the forwards quick, and I think you're getting some opportunities on the rush because of that. I've seen through a 25-game sample size, I've seen enough to think that Andrew Brunette has a chance to be really good here if you can continue to kind of tinker the roster around and get him some players in here. Like, I think this team is currently constructed. I think they can make the playoffs. I think they could be an intriguing team once you get there. Like, could they be a team, especially like if Saros starts to figure it out, where like a Vegas or a Dallas or whoever looks around and says, you know what, really don't love the idea of playing against them. Like, they're going to be favored, obviously, but don't love the idea of going up against Nashville in the first round. Could they be that team at the end of the year? Maybe. I think they could. But I think that's about all they could be right now. I think there's still some tinkering that needs to be done with the roster, with the talent that they have. But the system and the early returns on Brunette, I think if you're a Predators fan, I think you should be really encouraged about, because they're generating and are generating consistently more than I thought they'd be able to do with this lineup.
Yeah, I mean they're generating. The underlying numbers are very positive for, you know, as we've talked about, you know, not all that talented, you know, roster. I mean, with a few exceptions. So, what does that mean down the road when we know the ridiculous numbers that, you know, he had in his year as mostly as the coach of Florida.
Yeah.
Also, we know how ridiculous the top end talent on that roster was. So, I mean, that was my whole thing when he came in. It's like, okay, Trotz talked about, I mean, the press release, right, was like offensive coach, all that stuff. Okay, but it's like, you know, to me, it's always like chicken and egg on that. It's like, okay, is that true no matter what you're working with?
Right. But
clearly, he's got a feel for this stuff. I mean, Trotz said that. I'm trying to think of what I guess that was the day that the Brunette's introduction, and then they broke out into little breakout sessions or whatever, and Trotz was just talking about how he teaches it, how he all the little nitty gritty stuff beyond just he had great numbers with Florida. It's looking like there's something there.
Well, and then there's the Trotz part of this, which I think we're continuing to learn about, and is going to be interesting to follow as it goes along here. Like, we know what Barry Trotz is as a coach, but as a general manager, like, what's that going to look like? And how aggressive is he going to be? Like, you think back to the draft, and there was all sorts of noise about him trying to move up into the top 5 in the draft to get one of these foundational players. You know, when you start to get to the offseason and even the deadline this year, like how aggressive is Barry Trotz going to be to try to accelerate this timeline, for lack of a better word? Like I don't expect him to be reckless this year. If the Predators are hanging around right where they're at right now and they're either in the playoffs by a couple of points or they're out of the playoffs by a couple of points, I don't think it makes a ton of sense to go like on a buying spree at the deadline this year if you're the Predators, and I don't think Barry Trotz is going to do that. But when you have cap space, which they have, and it looks like the cap from the projections is going to go up $4 million this offseason, which is a big jump from what it has the last few years. It's 4 times as much.
Heck yeah.
You're going to position yourself to be in a spot where you can be a player for some of these guys, either via free agency or to position yourself in trades. And that's the one thing about Trotz right now that we just don't know. Like how aggressive is he going to be via trade? How aggressive is he going to be via free agency now that he's made kind of his first foundational move? How quick is that timeline going to look? Like, it was clear this last offseason. I mean, he wanted Johansson out of there. He wanted Duchesne out of there. And he replaced them with guys like O'Reilly who, yes, are productive, but also approach the game, I think, the way that he wants them to approach the game.
Culture.
Yes. So, it's really interesting. Like, it's been a really interesting start to the season from that standpoint as well. And I think we're going to learn more about Barry Trotz as a general manager as the year goes on here. And part of that is he's pretty frank in his comments on Tyson Berry on our station the other day with Stillman and Company as well, which has generated a lot of reaction.
I'm a little uncomfortable with how much he seems to like Jared, but
he does.
No, those are very frank. We very much appreciate it. From a media perspective, home run. But I have a key question for you about this team that you need to answer.
We'll get into that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Your thoughts on Barry Trotz, Andrew Brunette, and the Preds through 25 games. What do you make of the regime change to this point, the style of play, all those things? 615-737-1025, our phone number. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. We are live from our 102.5 The Game studio, brought to you by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Talking Nashville Predators, 25 games in. What do we make of the start of the Barry Trotz / Andrew Brunette era? Andrew Brunette will join us here in about 11 minutes or so here on the program. Joe, you had a question for me regarding the Predators.
Well, I go back to our conversation from, again, before the run they've been on, 8 of the last 10 games, which, by the way, before I ask you this question, their goal differential is 0. Yeah. They're dead even, 88. You know who else is 84, 80 against?
I do not.
The Edmonton Oilers also.
Really?
And they've won 5 in a row, by the way.
They have.
To kind of get themselves back to and there's one other team with a 0 goal difference right now in the NHL. Can you name that team?
Is it St. Louis? I cannot name the team.
The Carolina Hurricanes.
Really?
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I mean, they've obviously been a bit disappointing.
Yep.
But they're still,
still good.
Hey, Joe.
They're going to be there.
Here's another stat for you.
Give me another stat.
Since November 14th, where do you think I'll let you guess. Where do you think the Preds rank in terms of points in the standings, looking at the entire NHL? So the last few weeks here.
I mean, I bet you they're top 5.
They are actually tied for first with the Avalanche with 16 points. And in that time frame, they are 8-3-0. So they have looked like a night and day different team. Obviously, the winning streak's in there, so that helps. But look, they are winning.
It does help
right now. So
you get points.
Yeah, this is very true. Now play this music. Dun-dun, dun-dun, dun-dun. Did you ever play that music? Did we ever get that out from Jared? The Pink Panther? We got to get the Pink Panther theme going. Yeah. No, but so to your point there, Nick, so that's my question. Before this, we were talking about that draft pick, that draft pick potential. It's like, well, some young guys, the system, you can see how it works, but man, imagine the cap space, the cap jump, and the high pick. So I think anybody would agree that making the playoffs, we've talked about it before, there's a tangible impact on the organization to have home playoff games, all that stuff.
Agreed.
But would you, if you could pick for this team, would you pick, you end up a couple teams out of the playoffs, but you kind of hang around this year, or, you dip further and you actually have a chance at a higher pick?
Well, if you're missing the playoffs either way, I'd go the higher pick. That's me. I think there's value in making the playoffs, even beyond like the financial part of it. I think there's value in making the playoffs for some of these young guys and going through that and learning what it takes to play that way. Like I think
in 2015.
I think back to 2015. Like they had a really hard-fought series against Chicago. A couple of those games went into overtime, and Chicago won them in overtime. And they went on to win the Stanley Cup. Next year in 2016, the Preds got a little further, got to Game 7 of the second round, and then the next year it took off and you got to the Cup final. Like, I'm not saying that there's always this linear path to getting there, but I do think for some of these younger guys, learning how to play that style of hockey and the intensity of that time of the year serves you well as you go throughout the rest of your career. I mean, look, they have plenty of guys that have done it, right? I mean, Yossi knows how to play in the playoffs. Philip Forsberg knows how to play in the playoffs. Ryan McDonough and Ryan O'Reilly have won Stanley Cup. So they've got guys, and Luke Shen. So they've got guys that know how to play in the playoffs. But I think there's a tangible impact for some of the younger players when that happens. If you're going to miss the playoffs anyway, even if it's close and you get like in some of those high-intensity games down the stretch like they did to close out last regular season, if it doesn't result in a playoff berth, I mean, I'd rather get the higher pick.
Yeah, I suppose even games like that, there's some benefit. It's not the same. It's not the same as a playoff
there's benefit.
Game, but there's some benefit. Yeah, but look, in terms of the nightly atmosphere, the conversation here, the enjoyment of fans, of course you'd rather see them, and they would be ahead of schedule. I mean, if they're right there, to me, I think that constitutes ahead of schedule.
Well, the main thing this year that I've heard from a lot of Predators fans, and I would agree with this for the most part, they're just fun to watch. Like, this is a fun hockey team to watch with the way they play the game, the style of play that they have. And I do think part of that is beyond the style of play. I think part of that with the fan base is that they've made changes and that they've got a new general manager and they've got a new head coach. And I think in some ways this season with the fan base is kind of viewed as house money a little bit of, all right, well, they've made all these changes. Let's see what they can do with it. And if they make the playoffs, great. That'll be awesome. If they miss the playoffs, that's okay because they're still building towards the future. And I do think like the shift in mindset with the fan base after they made all the changes that they did partly plays into why it's been a lot of fun to watch. Beyond just the play, like the style of play on the ice, which I also think is pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean it's actually a new era. So
it is.
We were just talking about those runs, 15 and then 16 the build and then even 18. I mean they're Game 7 against Winnipeg. You win another round of playoffs that year. Again, that era. Last time you won a playoff series, 2018, was still in place in 2022, and it had to end, and it has. And so now you have this, and a couple guys, key guys from that era, still here, but that's it. Well, 3. You can't discount Sissons. I was listening to Sissons on.
He's playing great this year.
He is, man. He is. He's one of those just underrated, long-term grinder glue guys that just does everything. Unnamed texture says, teams also physical deceptively, 4 Preds within the top 20 NHL leaders in hits. Did you know that stat, Keezer?
Well, he's nodding his head, yes.
He nodded.
Yes, they are one of the more physical teams. They also block a hell ton of block shots as well.
Hell ton.
So, sorry,
I like
yes.
that.
They have been
That's a new one.
Secretly,
That's a new one.
They have been not secretly, just kind of quietly, I think, playing well defensively despite the injuries. I think Luke Shin and I think McDonough have added that.
McDonough's been outstanding.
Yeah, they've added that element of closing out games. McDonough, when he's out there, I feel like, if he's going to make a read, if he has the puck deep in the zone or if he's in the neutral zone, I think he makes the smartest play every single time, and it's no guessing whatsoever.
Yeah.
When he's out there. He can, I think settle that group down. I've also been impressed with I'm not going to open a whole can of worms. I've been really impressed with Alex Carrier and Jeremy Lauzon and how they've played. I think that them just being able to get out there more often, and they chat a lot, and they talk a lot during games too. And so I think you have one guy that's more of a brawn. I think he was called a lumberjack by Brunette. I think it was last week. That would be Jeremy Lauzon, and then Carrier's been out. So, I mean, look, that's a duo that I've been impressed with, and if they break them up, I mean, I'll have to see how well it works, but, I mean, they're
broken
playing
up right now.
Yeah, they are right now. But I think that
not intentionally though.
They have been playing well, but the defense as a whole has been playing well, and we all know why Tyson Barrie's not playing, so we could expect to see him play a little bit better as well moving forward.
Coming up next, we'll be joined by Predators head coach Andrew Burnett. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Preds back in action tonight at Bridgestone Arena, taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Puck drop 7 o'clock, pregame 6 o'clock here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And to help us talk more about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in Predators head coach Andrew Brunette. Andrew, good morning. How are things going?
Hi, guys. Going good. Going good.
Appreciate you taking time to be with us. From your standpoint, look, I'm getting kind of exhausted, like just watching you guys play as much hockey as you've played in the last 3 weeks. How's it feel to be a part of it? And have you sensed some fatigue setting in?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's been a grind. Last 3 weeks, and get a tough week here this week. So kind of wrap it up on Tuesday in 14 and 26 or whatever it was, and it's a lot of games. I saw a little bit of the remnants of that with our group on Tuesday. Didn't quite have the same energy we had on the weekend, but it's a grind. Every team's got to go through it. We're in it right now, and got some points on the road, which is big, and got a big home game here before we go on for 2.
8 of the last 10, Andrew. So what if there's one thing you're pointing to right now that has elevated in this stretch, what would it be?
Oh, good question. I think our goaltending has been really good the last 10. And I think just maybe the comprehension, it just feels like we're competing a little harder or a little more sure of how we want to play as a group. Our identity's like carved into itself a little bit. When we play a certain way, we're effective, and I think the group's seeing that. We didn't get the results early, but they stuck with it. Now we're getting bounces like the other night against Chicago, and when you do the right things, a lot of times the right things follow. So we've been in a pretty good groove. But again, in this game, it's day to day, especially with this many games. You can't get too comfortable by your last 10 because number 11 tonight is a real tough one.
So when you talk about more sure of yourselves, I think of system, but then also there's just like certain things that you have to do in this game, no matter what your system is. So is it more one than the other?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of both, a little bit of trust. I think it was a change for a lot of our guys, and it was a little bit uncomfortable, and they weren't, we weren't quite sure. And that goes from, we've got some new players to a new way of playing a little bit. And I think we were just starting to have a little more faith in what we're doing together collectively as a group.
Andrew, on the Ryan McDonough front, it's been really interesting to watch him and Yossi play together. They've been, I think, really effective for your guys. But as a coach, having a guy like McDonough that just seems to make the right play every time. We were just talking about that a few minutes ago. What's that like as a coach? What's been your view of just Ryan McDonough and what he adds to your lineup on a nightly basis that maybe goes a little bit unnoticed to the casual eye or to the average fan?
Well, actually, even to retract my statement, I guess the last 10 to have Ryan back has probably been one of the biggest reasons that we're able to go on this run. It just solidifies the back end. His experience, he's been there multiple times. He's won, at every level. He's just a winner. He's kind of one of those serial winners that knows how to do things the right way, knows how to close out games, knows when to put his body on the line, knows when to call out teammates, knows when to lead by example and to lead vocally. So he's been really important to this group. And when he's out there, it's a little bit of that calming effect, I think, even as a coaching staff, but I think even as that whole group. It could be chaos around, and he always seems to keep his poise and make the right play. And very underrated. I was very familiar with him for years and years, going back to Minnesota when I remember watching him in high school, and then who he was and how solid he was in the big moments. So he's to retract my statement from earlier, he's one of the big reasons we're at where we're at.
Talking to Preds coach Andrew Brunette. So obviously, Andrew, you focus on the day-to-day, and it's the next game, and it's a big one tonight. We sit here and talk about, big picture and off-season and whatever. We were just talking about, like, the benefit for this team if you guys can hang in and be certainly in playoff games, but even in a playoff race late. Like, what does that do in particular for young players if you can be in something like that, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule?
Well, I think it's always invaluable experience to go through those kind of things because the pressure intensifies. The games become faster and more competitive and harder to play. So I think if you get the experience to go through it, The more you do it, the more you understand it, the easier it becomes in a lot of ways, as corny as that sounds. But I think a lot of the groups, some of our younger guys went through it last year, and I think if we go through it again this year, they'll be even better for it. And you always want to be in that grind at the end of the year, because that's the best time to play hockey. And once you get in the playoffs, you never know what happens. So I think as a coach, like you said, I'm just living with your Tampa. It was a real tough challenge, and and then I know we had a hard weekend here, so I'm not looking too far down the road. But if you're asking as a player and as a coach, it's invaluable experience that you can't trade. You can't say November games are the same as March games, because they're not. And to understand how to play to March is how you win Stanley Cups.
Andrew Burnett with us here on Robby and Rexrode. So, Andrew, obviously there's familiarity that you had coming into this season with Derek McKenzie and the relationship there. What have you learned about Highnote and Richards as a coach with you on your staff? I know you played with Highnote in your playing days, but what's that process been like, getting to know those guys and obviously forming relationships with them as you're trying to coach and bring in this new system on the fly?
Oh, it's been easy transition. Obviously, past relationship with Danny, playing with him and keeping in touch with him over the years, and still in a fantasy football league with him back from our Avalanche days. So we've kind of kept that connection going. And then Todd coached me for 2 years, so I'm very familiar with Todd. And every time I'd run into him, always from afar appreciated his work. The teams he's coached have always had a little bit of a consistency to them and a certain style to them. So it's been an easy transition. I think they've been they're willing to learn, to help, and they're tremendous people. So it's been easy.
So, Andrew, obviously in the last few days, situation with Tyson Barrie, Barry Trotz came on this station a couple days ago and made it clear. I mean, he wasn't happy, basically that story got out. So that's a management side, but from the coaching side, how have you handled a situation like this, which these situations sometimes come up, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, it's not easy. It wasn't an easy decision with Tyson. I think he just wasn't playing up to my expectations. I thought he has another level to get to, and it's competitive back there with our decor, with Schenner getting back healthy and Mac got back healthy. And so it's hard. But I have to do what's right for the team. And I think taking Tyson out for a game just to try to rejuvenate him, try to get him going again, trying to get him to play at the level that I truly believe he's capable of getting to. So I didn't look much past that. I know it's gone viral, and I know there's been a lot of noise outside our dressing room, and I can't control that. I can just control what I have. And with Tyson, he's still on this team, and he's a super guy, great teammate. At the end of the day, for me, I just needed them to play better, and it wasn't personal whatsoever. And it's our job to try to get him to play better. And I thought it's time. Other guys were playing better than he was, and as a coach, you have to do what's best for the whole team, not just one guy.
Well, Andrew, last thing here for you. You mentioned fantasy football. How's that going this year? You doing well? Bad year? How are things going?
What? I came out of the hop really fast. And just starting to fade here. I'm going to sneak in the playoffs, but I think I've lost 3 in a row. So I had a great run early. Tough week last week. I had Nathaniel and Dell get hurt early on. Pat Mahomes wasn't great. So it's been a grind. I gotta get my team regrouped here. We kind of have to get going. It's been
playoff time.
It's playoff time.
Like you said, you get in, you don't know what's going to happen.
That's right.
I lost Stevens. I started Stevenson in New England. He got hurt, early. So that's a tough week when that happens, and all in the first quarter with some of your guys. So
injury bug hitting it late. No question. Well, Andrew, appreciate you taking time to be with us. We'll talk to you a little bit later this morning at the morning skate. But thanks for being with us. Good luck tonight against Tampa, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Good hearing from you.
Absolutely. Predators head coach Andrew Burnett, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. I will say, him and Trotz both pretty frank in terms of the Tyson Barrie discussion part of this. And, obviously there is the management side, there's the coaching side, and those two things are kind of different in this situation in terms of how you view it. But, I mean Burnett there, I need him to play better. Like, that was my goal. Need him to get him to play better. Right. And he got in there the other night when they went 7D. We'll see if he's in there tonight, too.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what preceded all of this, right? It's performance.
Exactly. So it's going to be interesting. Obviously all that's out there, and it's swirling around right now, so is he going to play today? Is there a trade coming soon with Tyson Barrie? Going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out here. Coming up next, it's time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning at 7:45 here on the program. We'll do that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment, let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
This is so frustrating.
He's kind of ugly, though.
It is that time of the day, time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning at 7:45. Joe Rexrode's Rant of the Day. My favorite song in the background, the Tennessee Oilers anthem, or whatever it's called. Ronnie Dunn.
By the way,
Shout out to the year 1998.
Yeah, and they're going to be wearing those Oilers uniforms when the Texans come to town.
They are.
If there's one game
one thing to look
of
forward
the
to.
5, if there's one game of the 5 remaining that Amy Adams-Strunk absolutely needs to win,
Yep,
that would be the one.
I would agree.
So speaking of the Titans, I want to talk today about the term puff piece.
Okay.
What does that term bring to mind when you when someone says it?
You talk about like a specific piece that it brings to mind, or just
What does it mean? What does it mean, a puff piece?
It just means that you are pumping the tires of whoever you're writing about. Is what I kind of view that.
You're
as.
kissing cheeks.
Kissing cheeks, I guess
Okay.
is another way to put it.
So it's like it's just like it's praise. Then you
Yeah, I
So-
guess.
so I say that I think puff piece is the most overused term in journalism criticism. Okay.
It was used on our program yesterday.
It was, which is why I bring it up. Now, first of all, that was Kaharski talking about Teron Davenport's story on Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel. So to me, like a puff piece, to some people, a puff piece, I guess, is basically anything that's not just torching someone, right? I mean, that's really what it is.
To some people, yeah.
Yeah, so to some people, which I think those people would be, two people come to mind.
Okay.
Stilly and Pauly. Because, it's funny because Jared has infuriated me in the past. Like, I wrote this story about Jerry Stackhouse a couple years, or I guess, it was 3 years ago now. Jeez. Including, like, I actually called Jeff Goodman, who hates Stackhouse.
Yeah.
Well, you know this. We talked about this. I'm going to read this quote again. This is from the story. Quote from Jeff Goodman. Quote about Stackhouse. Quote, I'm not saying Bryce Drew is a perfect coach, but I think he's a heck of a lot better than Jerry Stackhouse. You fire Drew and then you go out and hire a former NBA guy who, from all accounts, doesn't value recruiting, doesn't work hard, and is extremely thin-skinned. End quote. That was the quote in my puff piece about Jerry Stackhouse. You freaking jackass. So
That long fuse on display again.
yeah, I know. Well, I mean, this is years later. That's a long fuse.
It is.
Right. So, again, Jared is a guy who thought, pop piece, pop piece, pop piece. I mean, I'm assuming he said it about TD's story. I don't know. I haven't heard his analysis of it. But the thing about TD's story is it wasn't a puff piece. So, Kaharski's wrong, too. Which, by the way, Stilly and Pauly, which is a show that I'm absolutely destined to bring together. You know that those guys are – go ahead.
Is that what we should call it tomorrow when we take over Stillman's time slot?
Just call it Stilly and Pauly?
He's going to be with us.
I think we should, maybe.
Let's go Stilly and Pauly.
Those guys are like, they're kind of enemies. Like, Paul's really, really mean to Jared.
Yes.
But you know what they're kind of like? They're kind of like Voldemort. Like, it's Paul DeMort and Jerry Potter. Like, they have the same blood. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're enemies, but they're actually of the same.
Paul
Like
DeMort.
Paul DeMort and Jerry Potter. There we go.
Kind of looks like Voldemort.
He kind of does. Holy crap.
Sure, he'll be thrilled I said that.
In the New York version of Voldemort. So, the puff piece.
Cadabra.
See, there you go. You're getting there. But puff piece. They are absolutely of the same mind. Anything's a puff piece. It's a puff piece. Puff piece. Like everything, and again, this is where I separate it because Jared's not a writer. Jared doesn't have puff pieces. He doesn't write. Paul does. I need to go through any story or column he writes that isn't just complete flame throwing is a puff piece, right? I mean, I guess. So the TD story, I also want to bring this up to bring up some things that I was wrong about, which I found out yesterday, which I think are important for the record.
Okay.
So we were talking yesterday about how it seemed reactive, right?
Yeah.
And it did. I mean, that's how I thought. I mean, it's like all this stuff is going on, and now it's like Vrabel and Carthon talking about, like that's from the Titans' perspective. Let's get it out there, that we work together or, whatever. Well, the reality of that is that when the Atlanta Journal-Constitution guy, this is from TD, because I was going back and forth with TD yesterday to try to figure out the specifics on this. Atlanta Journal-Constitution guy got Rand Carthon on the phone, and so TD requested Carthon. So that's going back that's weeks, and he talked to these guys during the week going in the Tampa Bay game.
Okay.
So this was completely independent of all the stuff that happened. It ended up timing out to come out after it. It is interesting, right? And again, I was under the wrong impression there. So not only is it not a puff piece, it was not a reactive piece. But I'm sure Paul DeMort has different thoughts.
This could be your greatest invention ever.
Thank you.
Just beautiful.
I don't think Jerry Potter doesn't work perfectly, but I mean, like, they're enemies who actually are kind of related to each other, right?
Yeah. Keep it going with that.
Oh God,
it'll be good.
There's just too much. Like, we've had so many nicknames for Jared, and we forget some of them.
Look, I mean, we talked about this yesterday, like from the TD part of this from Carthon, what Carthon had to say. I don't know that I learned like a ton more about Carthon. Like I still thought some of the Carthon comments were pretty reserved, like when it comes to his responsibilities, and we talked about the staying in the background type of thing. Like, it's like, okay, well, you are the general manager and you traded away Kevin Byard. You might want to get out there and talk about that at some point.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Like there's parts of that where I don't know that we learned a ton
unsatisfying
about that. That were unsatisfying.
Yeah,
but it is interesting. Vrabel talked about him enjoying working with Rand and the front office that they've established together. The bottom line is this, and we saw some of this yesterday, and this goes back to a point I think we brought up. They're going to say what they're going to say, and it's up to you whether or not you believe it. Like, if you believe that Vrabel is actually happy here working with Rand and the front office.
We could just call him Vran.
We could. If you believe him when he says that, okay, good. You take him at his word. I mean, there are some people that no matter what he says right now think that he's got one foot out the door pointed towards New England. So
all these people who are public figures say things, and it's our job to record them, and ask them, and then they say stuff. And I mean, it might turn out that way, it might not. But again, my whole thing with their whole thing is I don't care if you like each other. Do your job. Good football players and coach them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So here's a comment that says, Joe, why didn't you criticize Paul's comment yesterday when he was there? Man up, Joe. Yeah, that's a good point. I rarely ever say anything cross to PK. Ooh, don't get mad at me, PK.
If he's Paul DeMort, you might want to watch yourself a little bit.
Someone said Senator Palpatine. That's not bad.
Well, not bad.
But if we're gonna do it is like they are enemies who actually are sort of like father and son. A little bit.
Paulie Jr.
Jared emerged from Paul's spleen. I don't know.
A lot of Paul's body parts being talked about the last couple of weeks on the program.
This is the best segment when you guys have brought up anything to do with pop culture references that have to do with
Is
Jared
it? We've had some good ones.
Paul DeMort. I do like Paul DeMort. Jerry Potter doesn't quite work.
I like the Senator one.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Zach says he thought he said fluff piece. Fluff piece? I think he said puff piece, didn't he?
It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know. But
we want to be accurate.
Fluff piece sounds like we're talking about a little lap dog.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, we'll be joined by our good friend Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports. We'll get into all things NFL with him. Make sure you make your silly underdog picks today for your chance to win weekly prizes. You can play at theGameNashville.com or the 102.5 The Game app. Silly underdog picks presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. And as we do every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our good friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, gents. How you doing this morning?
Awesome. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. Charles, the Titans about to play on Monday Night Football, which I'm sure all of America is rejoicing about to watch them next Monday as they take on the Miami Dolphins. We were discussing Miami earlier. They're the number 1 seed in the AFC right now, 9-3 overall, and yet you look at their schedule and they've beaten one team that's at 500, and that's the Denver Broncos, who they beat 70-20. And other than that, not a whole lot of good teams that they've beaten on that list. So how do you view the Dolphins as things stand today at 9-3, currently the number 1 seed in the AFC?
Well, yeah, as you said, that win also over the Broncos at that time didn't feel like the most impressive win. The Broncos, I think, were still sorting some things out, especially on defense. You saw roster changes after that. But when you look at Miami, I think everybody knows that December into January is really where we're going to find out exactly what the measuring tape is. They're going to face Dallas at home. They're going to go to Baltimore, and then they're going to face Buffalo at home. And that's probably a game where Buffalo is going to be either trying to get into the playoffs or positioning is going to be extremely important at that stage. So, I think at this point, as you said, the schedule has not been the wins have not been against world beaters, especially when you look at, the previous games against, let's see, Jacksonville, 30-31. Oh, well, that's going back to Buffalo, 48-20 loss. The Eagles, 31-17, and then Kansas City, 21-14. So they still got a lot to prove. But, the one thing that I don't think anybody denies about Miami is there's a ton of speed. Chan, the running back, when he's healthy, he's had knee injuries this year, but when he's not healthy, that offense is about as dynamic as it gets. Tyreek Hill is legitimately somebody that I think you're going to see is going to get some MVP votes this year. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but he's definitely going to get some MVP votes. And, the offense under Mike McDaniel is about as dynamic as it gets in the NFL right now. So, but there's still a lot for the Dolphins to prove. And I think, defensively, again, if you're going to ask questions about them, it's going to be defensively down the stretch, whether or not they can just hold opponents down. They've given up a lot of points against the bigger threats this season. So, important game, I think, though, for Tennessee, because it's going to be, as you said, prime time. A lot of people are going to be talking about the Titans. Those primetime games are always fun because they put a microscope on both teams, and sometimes you have a team that is having a down season, and so what they end up talking about is what's going on with the head coach, what's going on with the general manager, where are the cracks in the organization, and we're going to see the Titans really, I think, get that microscope this week. And at an interesting time right now, because as we've talked about on the show, and a lot of the pieces that are being written right now, it's about the functionality of Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon and what's going to happen with these two guys when the season ends.
Do you have any new thoughts in that regard, since you brought it up?
Yeah, I thought you would ask me that. I don't. I don't. I know you guys were discussing some of the stuff that's been written about the relationship right now, and I will say that to me, when anytime you get a situation where you have a head coach who's going to be coveted when the season ends, and I think Mike will be by New England, that doesn't mean that he's asking for it. But again, I do think that if New England moves on from Bill, Mike is going to be a guy that they are going to be very interested in. There is an effort, I think, in the organization to go like, hey, look, we want to be able to showcase that things are in a working order here. And so, I think you do get pieces that get written because, you have a head coach and a general manager that want to be out there reflecting what's positive going on in their relationship. And I do think, though, historically, when you look at marriages like this, there's a year, if they work out, there's a year of adjustment, between the two. You're learning each other's language. You're learning how each person functions with the media. You're learning how each person functions inside the locker room. And then, you're building a level of trust. Like when you go back to Carolina's firing, I think that's a really good example of, you saw a team that put together a coaching staff of mixed cultures and styles and guys that did not have a ton of familiarity. And when things went horribly bad, there was a lot of, I think you could just say there was a lot of backstabbing that ended up happening on that staff. And it was because you just had stress of people who didn't know how to trust each other. You had failure. You had an owner that was involved on a consistent basis, and it was just horrible all the way through. You don't feel that in Tennessee. I will say that. Like that's it's been a tough season for both Mike and Rand, and yet you don't hear a lot of the same things you heard coming out of Carolina. Like a month ago, it was coming out of Carolina like, Frank Reich is in, he's in jeopardy here, and a lot of the staff, they don't like him, and they don't like each other, and the owner's frustrated. It's just not the same stuff you hear coming out of Tennessee. So I will say that on the upside, under stress, I don't feel like we're hearing that, hey, this is just an irreparable, there's some irreparable thing happening right now, and these two guys can't work together.
Charles, what have you thought of the way that Will Levis has played so far this year? We've talked with you about the offensive line and how bad that is, the lack of weapons outside of really DeAndre Hopkins in the receiving game. Overall, what have been your impressions of what you've seen from Levis to this point?
There's been slippage, obviously, since that first game. And I think like you said, the line's had a lot to do with that. I think the fact he's a rookie quarterback has had a lot to do with that. You see the sort of moment of frustration where he's, the sideline thing with Hopkins, and he's animated, and he's had some interception luck, honestly. You've seen some interceptions drop, so I think the turnovers could be worse. Obviously, there are ball security issues against the Colts. You don't want to see a quarterback fumble 3 times. So there's a lot of things I think that he has to clean up right now. But the upside of this is he's getting a lot of snaps. He's putting enough tape down in terms of like negative stuff that he's got plenty to work on, and he's going to know it. And, I don't think it's so hard to evaluate when a team has a really, really bad situation in offensive line. It becomes really hard to evaluate a quarterback in a way that's really accurate. In some of the decisions, you can evaluate those. You can say, okay, well, how is he reacting under pressure to this? Or is he playing scared? Or is he over-relying on some of his talent in terms of like the arm? Can he play within structure? So is he, when I say that, I'm saying, everything's breaking down. Is he just giving into that and saying, you know what, every play, it's just going to be chaos. I'm going to run around and try to make something happen, which is not good. You don't want a rookie quarterback. That's a really bad habit to fall into. So I think that, again, he has struggled at times and over-relied on the arm with some of the decisions that he's made. And that's something that maybe, he'll earn some patience. He'll build up a resume of a little more patience once he has some time and isn't under duress almost all the time. The Colts game too, I think Henry going out in that game, like functionally, you want him to have his guys, right? And it's an offense that, again, I think even with the line issues, you want to lean into Henry being the centerpiece there. So although Spears had played well, I think once Henry goes out of a game like that, it feels like it's open season on Levis, and there's going to be so much more pressure to make things happen. The ball security things, that doesn't. He should still be better with ball security. There's no doubt about that. But it's a season of lumps, man. It really is. But I wouldn't be I wouldn't be overly concerned about where things have gone with him. I think it's just some difficulty that he was going to face as the line deteriorated, and there's nobody walking through that door once that happens, and you just have to know going into this offseason, what do we need to address around him and fix, and is it scheme, is it him, is it personnel? And that's what the offseason is going to be about. I think it's when you get beyond Vrabel and what's the future there, I think it's an offseason where a lot of this is about Will Levis.
Oh, sorry. I was confused with Robbie's hand signal there. Charles, MVP. MVP race. What the heck is going on with the MVP race? I have no idea. We do.
Oh, no, I think it's clarifying. I do. I think, when you look at the Dallas Cowboys schedule, I think it's very, very fair to say that Dak Prescott, if he's going to win the MVP, he's going to win it in the next, stretch. I would say he is the leader right now, and I would say that, Philly, Buffalo, Miami, Detroit, right? That's your next 4 games. He can win the MVP in the next 4 weeks, and he's playing absolutely. I think the best football of his career. He looks as comfortable, accurate. Everything that they've always wanted out of him suddenly feels like it's all coming together since that loss in October to San Francisco. And I think he's the league MVP, and he's just got to show it in the next 4 weeks. Now, if he doesn't, the window's there for Jalen Hurts. I still think the window is potentially there for Brock Purdy. But for Dallas, man, I'll tell you what, this team, in terms of contracts, I don't know, it's kind of frightening where they're heading because, I think Prescott's got nearly a $60 million cap figure next year. And so they're going to have to resolve that by getting an extension done as soon as possible. And he has a no franchise tag, no trade clauses in his deal, which puts all the negotiating in his favor. Now he's hitting an MVP stride going into these contract negotiations. When you talk to high-level agents who do quarterback deals and just kind of know how this all goes, they all say the same thing. He's going to be the highest-paid player in football next offseason. He's going to be $55 million plus APY when he does his deal. And, maybe he'll be coming out of an MVP season. We'll see how the postseason goes for them. But when you get beyond that, not only is it likely that Dak Prescott's going to be the highest-paid player in the NFL, they're trending in a direction where Micah Parsons is going to be the highest-paid defensive player in the NFL. We're talking $35 million plus per APY for an edge rusher. And then CeeDee Lamb has finally ascended to that sort of elite-level number 1 wide receiver that they really hoped he would. The problem with that is those guys now cost $25 to $30 million APY each year. So you're talking about 3 guys that, in terms of just a flat financial perspective, are going to account for $110 to $120 million APY each year. We'll see where the cap goes, but that's such an immense amount of a cap load to have just in 3 guys. It could be 35% of your cap when you look at it from a flat perspective in those 3 guys. It's just, I'm sure Dallas is, they love that, but it's going to cost them in the long run. They're going to end up losing some players. It's a good example.
Because of the salary cap? Salary cap will force them to lose some players. Is that right?
Yeah. I don't think
okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, T. Higgins isn't going to be a Bengal. He's not going to be a Bengal next year because of the because when Joe Burrow, this idea of Joe Burrow's going to take a team-friendly deal, and then he was like, nah, not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and max out my deal. I will say about Dallas, the personnel department is going to be extremely important the next 5-6 years because they're going to have to start, finding a lot of cheap players, and they're going to have to be okay unless they're going to just say, you know what, let's figure this out, spread the money out, we'll do dead drop years, and at some point we'll cease to exist basically for 3 years once we're past, the prime of some of these guys. It's going to be really difficult for Dallas to deal with all this. They've made some good picks, and they've had some high-level players that are all really turning into all-pro sort of like annual all-pro players every season.
We'll have more with Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We continue our conversation with Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, Jordan Love has looked awfully good the last three games with the Green Bay Packers, and all of a sudden they've climbed back into a playoff spot. What do you think of the way that he's played and what that could mean for Green Bay as they move forward here.
Wait, is Joe disagreeing with us? What do you, Joe?
Robbie's a Packers fan. I'm just saying. I'm
waving the flag.
I'm stunned he brought up Jordan Love.
Looks good.
Jeez. No, he really looks good, and it's interesting because not only has he looked. So I covered the first game in Chicago, and I thought that game alone, I was like, okay, yeah, there's some comfortability for him in the offense. There were some misses, though, on some pretty big plays, and you're like, all right, it's probably going to be a season where we see him clean some things up as teams understand how to, what to throw at him defensively to confuse him, things like that. And I think he went through some lumps, and having all these young skill position guys around him was a little bit of a liability the first half of the season. But then as they kind of smoothed out, they got over that hump, there was a little more consistency from some of the young guys. He's looked, I think, as confident as I've ever seen, in that offense, working with Matt LaFleur. And there's an element, too, of I think he's actually coached up some of these young guys. And instead of having an element of, like Rodgers last year, so much frustration working with some of these rookie wideouts. And you haven't seen that with Love. He's been, when you talk to guys in the building, he's very even-keeled with a lot of these young guys. And what's really interesting is they're quietly, like, they have a heck of a offensive, like, when just the young pieces. There's so many, Christian Watson, look, he's boom or bust. I still don't know if that's a guy that's going to be a dominant number one receiver. He still drops a lot of passes. But there's no doubt that the talent is there. I think Romeo Doubs, another guy that has really shown some consistency this year of, you look at him and you think, well, at the very least, he could be a really good number two. I think Jaden Reed, the kid out of Michigan State, the rookie, has been fantastic for them. He gives them some offensive flexibility. They can hand the ball off to him at times. He's a pretty tough player. Dontavian Wicks. That's something that's funny. I was talking to a scout about him the other day, and I said, Wicks was a guy who I think he went really late in the draft. I think it was like a 5th round pick, and I'm like, he's got size, and he just looks really good when you watch him play. And the scout was like, God, man, he's like, I loved him so much. We just didn't know if he could, handle how we function in our offense. So you're talking about, these are all first and second year players who I think have a decent ceiling. And then Luke Musgrave, the tight end, another guy who I think I like him a lot. He had a lot of injuries in college, but when you watch him play, you're like, if he stays healthy, he looks like one of those guys that can develop into a pass-catching, kind of explosive tight end, which is a little bit of a unicorn in the NFL nowadays. So I think a lot of it, the defense is, what do you need to talk about? They've thrown so much draft capital and money into the defense that you would expect eventually those guys, when they stay healthy, are going to turn a corner, especially when, like, Rashawn Gary is on the field playing to his ceiling. They're a really tough team. But to me, when I look at them, like, man, offensively, that quarterback in the wide receiver room and the tight end room, there's a lot that they're going in the right direction. And if you're Brian Gutekunst, the general manager, you have to be beaming right now over that situation. And you also have to be laughing when you hear Aaron Rodgers talking about, why are people leaking to the media? Well, this is not what an organization should do. And I'm sure Brian Gutekunst is like, how come when you were in town and all these leaks about me and how I was handling you weren't out there saying, why are people leaking to the media?
Interesting point.
I just had to fit that one in.
Yes. Nice. Yeah, way to get that in there. And this is great because now Robby can take a week off from trying to fire Matt LaFleur.
I have been trying to do that for a year.
Yeah, you have been. But speaking of that, Charles, here's a transition for you, buddy. Job openings in the NFL. Anything becoming clear, the picture becoming clearer to you?
It seems like it's going to be rough. I'll tell you. I mean, there's a lot of so what, we got the interim, obviously, in Carolina. Washington, I think, is a spot where I think there's a likelihood there's going to be an opening. I actually think Chicago, there's a likelihood there could be an opening there, depending on what they want. I assume they're going to end up with a number pick in the draft. And, who do you pick? Is it Caleb Williams? Is it Drake May? And then do we want an offensive head coach to pair with this guy? What do we want to do with our front office, general manager? So I think Chicago's one I'd look at. New Orleans, I think Dennis Allen, we'll see. The one thing he has going for him is, I do think ownership has an element of patience there. And but I think they're a little frustrated with how things have gone this season. Tampa Bay, weirdly, I've heard Tampa Bay is a potential landing spot for Belichick. That's another place that I think you could see an opening. So let's see. That's just the NFC. Look, even Atlanta. I know they're 6-6 right now, but he can't. It's right there for him. For Arthur Smith, it's right there. This winning the division and getting into the playoffs and taking another at least micro step forward in the organization. You don't want to see if there's a collapse down the stretch. Then I think that you'd have to look at that situation and wonder if maybe there could be a change. New England, I don't know how. To me, I think there's almost no way Bill can be back there next year. However, I have this nightmare in the back of my head where I'm like, watch him not get fired or leave or whatever, however it goes down, and they draft a quarterback, with what could be the second pick in the draft, and he completely turns it around in 2024. I'm like, I think it's the scar tissue of all those years where you kind of question whether it was finally the descent when Tom Brady was there, and we're like, okay, this is it. This is when they fall off the cliff, and so you're still scared to say it. But New England, I just don't see. That to me looks like a very big, long turnaround, and so it's hard to see Bill there after this season. Let's see the Raiders. There's the interim. The Jets. I think everybody's safe. People are going to talk about them, but I think what Rodgers has said, what ownership knows. It was a 2-year buy-in. 1 year went horribly wrong. I don't think they're going to disband it after 1 year. So I think they're fine. The Raiders, there's obviously the interim situation. The Chargers, I think the Chargers are a job. I'd be surprised if there was not a change there. There's just been too much money pumped into that offense, that defense, and especially for the defense to not have turned the corner by now. I think Brandon Staley is likely out after this season. Buffalo, I can't see them not giving Sean McDermott another season. But let's see how the rest of the season goes. Obviously, they're at the waterline right now, and if they're under 500, they don't come close to getting into the playoffs. I could see Buffalo potentially having some change over there. So that's a lot of jobs. That's a whole lot. I didn't count that, but it has to be near double digits where you could potentially have change this offseason.
Yeah, that's wild. More with Charles. Go ahead.
Let me give you real quick. Let me give you two names, two kind of interesting names when I've called around and sort of asked about coaching candidates. I don't think he's going to be this cycle, but Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator for the Cardinals, which is you're like, wow, that's a bad team. Like what the heck? That's not a very good record. A lot of people like what they've seen on tape from him this season. So kind of file that in the back of your head about a guy who's probably going to end up on coaching lists, beyond 2024, especially if he can have a fully healthy season with Kyler. But just it's wild when you call around a lot of people talking about him. And then Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings. It's remarkable when you talk to the teams that played the Vikings, they're like, you should see what he is doing on defense on tape, the things he's throwing at you. It is unbelievably difficult to face the scheme that he is putting out there right now with the Vikings. And I think it was so difficult. I thought it was eye-opening after they played I think it was the Broncos. Sean Payton came out and was like, I'm so glad that week's over. They had such a hard time going into that game preparing for the Flores defense. So in terms of defensive hires, I think Flores' name is going to come back up again, and he's going to be a head coach.
Charles, great stuff, man. Appreciate you take time to be with us this week, and we will talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good, guys. Take care.
Absolutely. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, our guest on Robby and Rexrode. A lot to react to there from Charles. We'll do that coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Thursday morning. Got some tickets to give away, a pair of tickets to see Tom Segura at Bridgestone Arena coming up on Friday, April 12th. Be caller 3, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller number 3 will win a pair of tickets to see Tom Segura at Bridgestone Arena coming up on Friday, April the 12th. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Lots to react to from Charles Robinson there. That could be a whole lot of coaching openings in the NFL as he kind of goes through the list there. I've not thought about it, and I'm sure some of those won't actually open, but lots of potential openings coming up this offseason in the NFL.
Yeah, and interesting that going through all those openings, but Robert saw, yeah, they're fine. But, I mean, what he said makes sense, right? Yeah. There's going to be a lot. I know, the numbers on that are going to be compared to some very remote situations in NFL history in terms of, his record and the start and everything. But, honestly, I think it's been very weird with how he's handled both the actual quarterback situation, the messaging on it and all that, but I think he is a good coach. So it makes sense for him to have a run with Aaron Rodgers. Very interesting on the Bears to me, too. Just the whole thing with the Bears. Not just the fact that Eberflus may be out, but then, okay, so they're going to take Williams or May? Okay. So are there any teams out there? Well, he brought up Arthur Smith, which I think is a key month for Arthur Smith. Is that a team that might look at Justin Fields? Somebody, right, is going to look at Justin Fields and be interested, I think. I know you're down on him.
Well, they'll be interested. Do you look at Justin Fields if, let's say you're Atlanta. Do you look at Justin Fields as this guy can be our franchise quarterback? Or do you look at Justin Fields let's give him a shot, see what he can do, and then we'll react after that. I think it's got to be based on what we've seen from him to this point, you can't be confident that he's your franchise guy moving forward. I don't think.
Yeah, he's in between because if I'm Atlanta, I like him way better than what I have now.
For sure. Yeah, there's no question about that.
So he's certainly, to me, he's had some issues there, some limitations. He is, as a playmaker at times, he is wow, right? Which is why I was big on him coming in the league. But then there's still just a tick too slow on too many things, I don't know, man. I still think he could grow into being a really good quarterback in the NFL. Top guy. I'm not saying that, but he's certainly at least a middle of the league starter if he has a good support system. So that's just going to be interesting because, anybody who needs a quarterback would rather shoot higher than that. They want to believe that whoever they draft is going to be the franchise quarterback.
Which is why Chicago's about to do that, by the way.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's, it's why my guy, our guy friend of the show, Tannenbaum last year said, trade away and draft Bryce Young. I was in favor of that.
He did.
But it's also, I think he's pretty good. I think he's pretty good, and at times, just a tremendous, problem for defenses. I mean, I've just seen, especially I think this year when he's been able to be out there, I've seen some growth there. I think.
Charles did not mention Vrabel as a job opening.
Yeah. But he did mention the trade. The trade. Right. Now, apparently, Belichick's taking his retirement job on the Gulf Coast. So
is Tampa if he goes to Tampa, is it because he's like, you know what? I got to follow in Brady's footsteps. I got to get down there to Tampa, win a Super Bowl in Tampa, and then I can retire.
I'll win 2 Super Bowls in Tampa, and then you will all go back to saying it was me more than Tom.
The next partnership, Baker Mayfield and Bill Belichick down there in Tampa.
What a duo. What a treat that would be. Well, for Belichick, he'd be like, yeah, I'll take that over what I've got going on now. Charles brought up a couple candidates, and obviously there's going to be some recycling, but that's a lot of opportunity for different people. Now, Ben Johnson from the Lions, I think
he's going to get a job.
He's just about as high on the list as everything I see is.
And then there's another guy that's very intriguing that I'm interested to see, and I think some of it may depend on what happens here in the college football playoff. But does Jim Harbaugh decide to take his talents to the NFL?
I think there's a pretty good chance of that. Yeah. Especially, I mean, if you're him, you don't have clarity on what all is going to shake out with the investigation or what that might entail. You've been suspended twice for 2 different things this year, and that team is losing a lot of talent. Now, they've been recruiting well, so, I mean, he can have like a good team next year, but I assume the quarterback's leaving. Offensive line, I think most of it leaves. So it would be the right time. And I think that, he tried to get to the NFL, a couple years ago, and it was, he tried to get the Vikings job, right? And then put out the statement like, I'm very happy at Michigan,
Yes.
back when like Michigan fans wanted him fired. Now I think that he would get a job. I know some Bears fans. I'd like to. How about Ryan from Chicago? What do you think, Ryan from Chicago? A little
Harbaugh,
the Harbster, and Caleb Williams. What do you think?
If I'm Harbaugh, I've probably got my eye on one job, and that is the Chargers job with Herbert in place.
Yep,
that would be the job I would be if I were him. That I would be kind of honing in on.
Well, and that makes sense personally too. His first head coaching job was University of San Diego, so before he got the Stanford job, so he knows the area. It's a great area. And
they don't play in San Diego anymore. But other than that,
let me give you some more analysis about the NFL. The Portsmouth Spartans. I think they are going to be a contender in a couple years.
Vrabel.
The St. Louis Cardinals.
Vrabel was very familiar with Houston, being with the Texans. So when he took the Oilers job here, he really nailed it.
Like, I'm never going to get it totally through my head that they're not the San Diego Chargers. Like, I never will.
They should be the San Diego Chargers.
Well, I know they should be.
Go back.
Yeah, like, it's the whole thing in that city. You're the focal point of the city. It's an amazing city, and you're completely lost where you are in every one of your home games has more visiting fans than your own fans.
Agreed. That's what I'm saying. Going back.
Freaking NFL. I blame them more than me for being dumb.
Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vanderbilt women's basketball. The Commodores will be on the road against Butler. Tip-off at 6 p.m., pregame beginning at 5:30. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Coming up next, it is time for Pred's Pick to Click. Pred's in action tonight, taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Be the first caller at 615-737-1025. 615-737-1025. If you guess a goal scorer for the Predators tonight, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Nashville Predators home game. We'll do that next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
It's time for Preds Picks to click.
And a shot of the score.
Do you think you know who will score a goal in tonight's Predators game?
Little give and go.
Shoot your shot for a chance to win Preds tickets. Call 615-737-1025 now. Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. Visit tjandersonhomes.com to see why they are preferred so often. It's Pick to Click, now on Robby and Rexrode.
It is that time of the day, time for Preds Pick to Click here on Robby and Rexrode, brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Preds in action tonight against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Puck drop 7 o'clock, pregame 6 o'clock here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. The standings are as follows. Joe Rexrode making some progress last time out. The listeners with 6 correct answers. Rexrode now with 5 after he correctly guessed Ryan O'Reilly in the last game. Nick Keyser with 3 and myself with 2. I cannot get off of 2. I've been at 2 for a while in this competition. So, picked Philip Forsberg the other night. He had like 5 looks from the slot. Didn't score on any of them. Good stuff. Really enjoyed it.
So he should be mad at you.
Well, sure. You can't count the shootout either, which kind of sucks.
He did score in that. But
no, it would really suck if you could, actually.
And we've all 3 picked someone that was out of the lineup that night because I picked Cole Smith, and he was sick.
He was. Unfortunate for you.
I feel bad for you guys.
With that in mind, let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Jesse. Jesse, good morning. Thanks for calling in. Who is your pick to click for the Nashville Predators?
Good morning, guys. Going to go with Ryan O'Reilly tonight.
Awesome, Jesse. Thanks for the call. The factor, the selection by Jesse. So taking your approach from last game, which means, Joe, you're up first.
That's an excellent choice, Jesse. I think you've really made a good choice there. I guess I'll have to settle for Philip Forsberg.
All righty. O'Reilly and Forsberg off the board. Nick Keyser, you are up next. Your pick to click for the Nashville Predators. He does not play for them.
I would totally pick Stilly Potter if that was possible.
Voldemort.
Oh, my gosh.
Voldemort.
We will not stop ever letting this go. I'm going to go the captain, Roman Josi. I need him to score. He's had a lot of looks from up top, so give me Roman Josi.
Roman Josi. I will go young Philip Tomasino. I think he's been playing well lately, and I think Philip Tomasino will score tonight against Tampa Bay, which is bad news for Philip Tomasino.
Yeah, now he can be mad at you.
O'Reilly, Forsberg, Josi, and Tomasino, the selections in Preds Pick to Click, brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Joe, a lot of people asking about Jerry Stackhouse on the text line right now. Another bad loss for Vanderbilt last night.
Yeah, and people asking if we're talking about it today. Someone asked for a call for his job. Like I said in the text there, Stackhouse is going to get this season. We've said it before. 5 years in that job, or really any Power 5 job, you have to get an NCAA tournament bid. People talk 2 years, 3 years. No, 5 years, yeah, you really have to. And they're bad. And they had everybody they're probably going to have this year. And this was the first time, but at San Francisco home and just basically no chance to win the game. It's just a bad situation.
But they've already reached the point where they're going to need to win like the SEC tournament to get in the tournament.
They're like 200 plus. Yeah, exactly. They're like 200 plus in the it's or Ken Pom, and it's very bad. But you know what's very good?
What's that?
DJ Burnside's illustration of Paul Demort and Jerry Potter. Also, I want to shout out Cam, who came up with the movie title Paul Demort in the Chamber of Sharks. It's pretty much the winner of the whole day. Cam, shout out to you, buddy.
It's been a beautiful day here on the text line.
You get a contract extension.
Here on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And Joe, we are initiating a hostile takeover of the Stillman and Company program tomorrow.
Yeah.
We will be on tomorrow from 2 to 6 p.m. Jared has the day off, so it will be you, me, and Paul Kuharski tomorrow from 2 to 6 p.m. talking all things sports around here. Chase and Big Joe will be doing our show tomorrow morning from 6 to 9, and we are going to the afternoons for tomorrow only. Us and Kuharski.
That is going to be something. Was Jared going to like extra film? Is he behind on film? The film room?
Well, a lot of film to watch before the Titans play on Monday.
So that means we won't get Jared tomorrow.
We won't.
On our program.
We will not.
All right. Well, we'll take his show instead.
We will completely take over the program tomorrow. You, me, and Kuharski. Looking forward to it. Should be fun. little bit of sleep tomorrow morning, too. There's that.
I can actually make sure teenagers get to school instead of just hoping like today. But they did. They made it, by the way, everybody.
That's good.
Thank you for your
there
well
was some
wishes.
concern earlier. It's good. That does it for us today. We'll be back not at 6 a.m. tomorrow. We'll be back from 2 to 6. Chase and Big Joe will be taking over tomorrow. And Chase and Big Joe is coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3, The Game.